Okay, I think we're live. Let me share the screen. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, we can begin. Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. I gave a talk a couple months back. Today, we're going to discuss threat modeling as a security tool to speed up audits, internal and external, development and debugging, to find areas of security gaps that can be filled and to help focus in areas that in complicated protocols. So a little bit on who am I? My name is Ray. I'm one of the senior researchers here at Certora. I'm also a team lead here. So I've been doing vulnerability research for the last 12 years, offensive and defensive. And I've been doing, I can't even count how many different audits, vulnerability assessments, defensive, internal red teaming in various protocols and big companies. So, what do we want from a useful threat model? We want three major things. We want it to be simple, right? Any document or any sort of tool that we use, if it's complicated, if it needs a lot of steps or anything of that sort, we're just not going to use it. We want it to be transparent. Even the simplest form or any comment system, anything like that that we use, if other people can't use it afterwards, if it's not clear what anything means, it doesn't matter how simple it is. And then obviously the third thing is focused. We just now, like early this week, I'm sure you guys all aware, we had the Kelp DAO attack, right? So if you have a massive protocol, you have a lot of markets, you have a lot of integrators and a lot of different tools, you want some sort of tool or database, some sort of way to highlight, hey, this token is compromised. What steps do you need to take in order to save your liquidity? Make sure that everything is as great as possible. So these are the three major components that we're going to go over and talk about. So complicated systems, they have a lot of issues, right? It's very hard to keep track of all the various components that you have, all the various parts, which parts have been audited, which parts have not been audited. Who are your integrators? Who are your integrators? Where are you invested in? What sort of versions you have? What sort of platforms are you using? VS Code extension, all that stuff balloons away. And obviously, if it's two developers, right, they can keep track of everything in their head. But as the protocol matures, as it grows, as it becomes bigger, capturing more liquidity, catering for more institutions, it becomes harder to keep track of all the moving parts. And you no longer have the ability to have one mega developer or mega architect that knows all the parts to the smallest detail. So you need some sort of mechanism in order to have the visibility to know which areas are interesting in this complicated system, right? So the tool has to be simple, so people will maintain it, right? We can come up and we can say to our team, "Oh, we had this lecture by Ray. It's the best thing in the world. Let's do it. It'll take us a month to integrate." Nobody's going to do it, or if they will, right? In 2 months, they're not going to maintain it, right? You need something simple and maintainable. Think of it like, I don't know, eating vegetables or going to the gym. If you have something that's too complicated, everybody's going to say we're going to do it and they end up not doing it. So it's not useful. It needs to be transparent, right? Either for investors or other internal and external teams or other auditors, right? And you can cater, you can choose what to put in the threat model depending on who's going to see it, but it should be visible. It should not hide behind a lot of clicks and wiki pages and books and documents. It should be very easy to navigate. It should be the most obvious thing in the world, and it should have the information that is needed. And obviously, the third part, it should be focused, right? You want to highlight the risk. So this is the system that we suggest. We're going to go over it, but This doesn't look that complicated, right? Obviously, this diagram is supposed to be a bit of a joke. It does have all the information, but let's break it down, because just having this big diagram with a lot of moving parts doesn't explain anything. And we want this to be super intuitive. So we came up at Certora with an acronym that should be easy to remember. So usually there's like ABCs, everything like that. So we're going to say this is the four A's. This is where we start. This is where we end. This is how we make sure to have the maximum security with the minimum effort, right? So this is how we'll break down our protocol, our ecosystem. We can write it before we develop. We can write it as we develop. We can update this. It's fine to update it during audits, but this should be a database of truth. So A1 would be assets. What do we as a company care about the most? There's the obvious one that it's going to be liquidity of our users, of our LB providers, of course, right? But sometimes protocols might have niche assets that are important to them. In this block, we'll keep track of our infrastructure, right? Where do they, if they're off chain on a specific server, that server is an asset, right? If we have signers, they are their keys are assets. If we care about, for example, our protocol to be always online, it should never be offline. That is an asset, right? Availability. If we care about um, gas cost, right? That would be an asset. So you might be saying there's infinite things we care about. Sure, you don't have to map everything out. Just sit by yourself or with your team and say, what do we care about? And then put it here. It's okay if assets only has a single block that says liquidity. That's fine. As the protocol mature, we'll add more things. Next one, actors. Super great, super simple. Any sort of address which is not the random address on chain is an actor, right? So you'll have your administrators, and you might have multiple different contracts that do different parts, right? You might have a repayer, you might have um, liquidity providers, you might have whitelist services, you might have your multi-sigs. So in this list, any single address or contract that you're interfacing with, or program maybe I should say, that you're interfacing with, you want to just write those down very clearly. Your protocol should not have a different control flow, different way to execute the program for addresses that are not mapped out by your actors. Trust me, just mapping these out can highlight so many gaps and areas of failsafe. We just had a client a month ago that if they had a legacy service, and we did this for them, so we managed to block it. But if they did it without us or with us at an early stage, they would have found that one of our Oracle providers is bad. Like for their specific token, that Oracle had a bug. But by just having that very clear Oracle and then the name of the Oracle or the contact of the person there, you can check for yourself that it's working. Other auditors can very quickly look at this page and say, "Oh, let's just check if we have in our database that this Oracle is underperforming, or a known bug for that Oracle, or previous attacks there." Super important. This should be trivial, right? If you can't track who your actors are, this should highlight a big red flag that the system is too complicated. There's too many configurable moving parts. This should be pretty well defined. Again, for most 99% of use cases. The third one is probably the hardest one, and this is assumptions. For this, you want to keep track of uh, oh, we're going to break it down in a moment. What you're assuming about the system, and we're going to break it down in a moment. And the final one is attack vectors. So assets, we talked about how you're going to identify it is what we're trying to protect, what we care about, what do our clients care about. For actors, we're going to talk about what's meaningful for the system, signers, you're going to put here also other contracts in your protocol. So if your protocol has multiple contracts that interface with each other, they're going to be identified as actors as well. Now, if you want, you can put in what those actors do and what their threat boundary is, what they're supposed to be able to achieve and whatnot. But this document as a tool should be simple to fill out. And obviously, you can make it grow. You can hire advisors to help you write this or to write this for you. Assumptions. This is where we left off the second ago. Uh, what do we assume about the system? If you're using, for example, a package, a protocol, a program, that a library that somebody else has developed, and maybe it's standard for the system, but you haven't actually audited it, right? You don't know what's happening there. It could be that you're not integrating with it correctly. So that would be assumption. Basically, every single thing that you think is out of scope or you think is not scary should be an assumption, right? So this will be things like nobody can steal our multi-sig signers keys, all right? So any sort of attack that involves stealing the multi-signer keys, that's something that we don't care about. That's fine. It's outside of the threat model. We are assuming that it's not going to happen. We had an issue that a legacy protocol had an underlying assumption that says there's no way to do a flash mint. We presented an attack, and they said, this attack is wonderful, but currently there is no feature to do a flash mint. So we're not going to fix it. Obviously, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts. You can't expect to fix everything. But in this scenario, in the threat model, there should be in the bold text that this is an assumption. And as you develop, this should not be super big, but you'll highlight those assumptions. And if at any point those assumptions break, right? Maybe one of the assumption is we don't have a single oracle because you have some sort of redundancy there, right? If at any point an update to the system breaks it because it becomes a single oracle, you want that visibility. You want somebody to say, wait, you have broken one of the assumptions. We need to make sure we understand what that means. The best examples is with reentrancy guard, that usually if the protocol doesn't have any sort of reentrancy hooks, then sometimes you don't have to have, well, this is more from solidity standpoint, but the general rules of thumb apply for Stellar as well, right? Just ask yourself what is true about the system right now and write that down because it might break in the future. The fourth one, attack vectors. This is something that you can fill for sure, but this is an area that your auditors should help fill in with you and for you, right? This will be basically what types of attack you're afraid of. 9 times out of 10, you will fill this out, and then you're not going to have, probably, right? You're not going to have issues in those attack vectors, but the auditor is going to find a new attack vector that you haven't thought about. This is what we call an attack surface, right? So don't think about it like a single, very narrow type of attack, but sort of families of attack, right? Routing issues, right, is a huge family, and there's a lot of different ways you could manipulate routing in your system, right? Maybe there's some front run attacks that you can do, right? It's like sandwich attacks. Maybe there's some reentrancy, some denial of service. So what you're gonna have to do is try to think, okay, I've been to this lecture, to that lecture, I've done some audits, or maybe I'm a developer with a secure mindset. Maybe I'm an auditor with a secure mindset, right? You write down a list of these attack vectors, and then you ask yourself, are these things that I'm afraid of in the system? All right. When you do an audit, the auditor is going to present, and they're going to present new attack vectors that you haven't thought about. And your job is to say, is this attack vector feasible? Am I afraid of this attack vector? Right? If there's an attack vector, like a denial of service attack vector that requires $1 trillion dollars worth of stablecoin or even just fiat, right? If they need that in order to attack you, probably that attack vector is out of scope. You don't care. Most clients that I worked with don't care about a government level attack, right? If the US government shuts down all the servers in North America, okay, we're not going to defend against that scenario. So by writing the attack vectors, you get to choose what are inside the scope and what are outside the scope. What are we scared of and what we don't scared of. So let's bring it all together. What you can do right now, if you're going home and you're going to do audits in Stellar, or if you're going to develop a new protocol, or if you already have a protocol developed, and perhaps I've convinced you that this is a useful tool, because this tool, just writing it down with clients, I can speak from experience, have saved clients tens of millions of dollars, right? On multiple chains, not strictly in Stellar. So this is super useful. I've seen at least, what was it, like 3 clients that just by having this document, been able to get a quicker due diligence from institutions and get investors very hyped. And obviously, there's the Stellar Foundation, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So you go back home, right? You create the document. You can call it a threat model, right? You map out your 4As: assets, actors, assumptions, attack vectors. You do the best that you can, right? It's fine. This is a best effort. And by the act of writing it down, it does 80% of the work. You have your team go over it, right? Maybe your manager. Everybody pitches in and tries to make sure that this is useful. And you don't have to get hyper specific, right? You don't want to waste your energy by getting like attack vector number 72, right? Not that interesting. And then as you do audits, as you develop the code, you open the document, you read over it. Whenever there's an incident, right, in your chain or even in another chain, you just play with yourself. Oh, there was a major incident. Let me open this document and see if this document helps me understand what I'm supposed to do for that incident, right? I put in profit as number 5 because we see this is speeding up debugging and development cycle. This is reducing auditing time, which is super great, right? If your auditors can give you the same value in, I don't know, a few days less, a week less, half of the time, right? This is useful. Or maybe they can't do it faster, but they can delve much deeper. Clients will be happy, investors will be happy, everybody will be happy. Super good. Okay? If this looks really simple, that's great. That means that this is useful. If it looks really complicated, we're going to have some Q&A afterwards, and then we can talk about it. So let's talk about Stellar Foundation, right? They have something really great, which is an audit bank. And for qualifying projects, and they have on their site a list of what qualifies. One of the things that they have is threat model. The Stellar Foundation threat model is a little different than what we do. We're an auditing firm, so we developed our own threat model based on what we see to help speed up, as we said, audits, improve security, delve deeply, all that good stuff that I mentioned before. Stellar Foundation has used a different system, so you can scan the QR to go to their guide, but I'm going to highlight a little bit of what their system is and then the differences between them. Let me just look if we have any questions. Okay, we're going to do it in the end. So they're using the stride model, which the 4As, right? You can think of it as sort of a high level view, right? You're identifying parts of the system segments. Stride thinks about the way that actions travel through your program, right? So if your program was, I don't know, to phone call somebody, right? So you have your phone, you dial in digit, it connects to the antenna, which connects to the DNS server, and it goes through all these various parts, and then it connects to another phone, and then you have a link, right? So Stride model takes every single part of this chain of events. So hand to phone is a part of the chain. Phone to antenna is another part. Maybe you do phone inside itself because there's some protocol in there. So it maps out, it takes this long chain of actions, right? And then it breaks it down. And in each part of that chain, it asks uh, 6 questions of common attack vectors and vulnerabilities for these part of the chain. And the idea is that if you secure these 6 properties with each part of the chain, the entire action will be secured, right? So the way it goes is you map out all the steps needed for that action. And if your program does some lending, so what is needed in order to borrow funds? If you're some sort of some strategy that wants to create maximum yield, then what is supposed to happen there? And for each step, so you take that action and you break it down to steps. You can do front end and back end. You can do, front end and chain. You can do just chain. You can do basically, you choose the resolution here. And then you ask those questions, right? Can that action be spoofed? Can somebody see that step and pretend to do it himself? Right? So we had a very common attack in other chains with permits, and those permits can be spoofed. Right? You can read in the mempool the permit, and then you can use it yourself. That's not great. Tampered. Can an action be tampered with, or can an action tamper tamper with the protocol? Right? So you can think of it as each step has to have a specific flow, right? So your phone connects to the antenna, let's call it the antenna A. If you can somehow provide data that makes the phone, instead of connecting to antenna A, it connects to a laptop instead, you have tampered with the flow. Uh, reputation. Oh heavens. Let's see if I remember what that step is. Uh, can you, oh no. Okay, we'll get back to that. Uh, in the end of the presentation, I'll tell you exactly what this one is. Information disclosure. Are you disclosing sensitive informations about your clients or about the protocol? Let's give a huge example from Web 2, actually. A few years back, you can look at a very big attack on Google servers, if I remember correctly, called Heartbleed, where you send a request and you say, give me a response, and then you say how many bytes the response should have. And then by giving a huge length, the Google server would just give you more information that is private that you weren't expected to get. So for that step, does it disclose information? So in our example, if the phone connects to the antenna, right? Maybe if it sends your private signing key to the antenna, that's not very good. Denial of service. Can it brick your phone or can it brick the antenna? Right? Can you brick the program? Can you make the program uh, not work correctly? Denial of service can be complete denial of service, but also make it very inefficient for other users to use the system. And elevation of privileges, pretty straightforward. Can an actor do an action that they weren't supposed to be able to do? Can an actor somehow, this, it doesn't necessarily mean elevate their own. It doesn't mean that I can become an admin, but if I can do an action that an admin can do, that is the same. So after you do these for each step, for each meaningful action, you document those, right? So this is the stride. Is one better than the other? No, no, no. Obviously not. We have the Star Foundation who are super smart and they work really hard and they found the system, which is it's the standardized, it's the best practice one, right? It's wonderful. The system that I presented earlier is a complementary, right? I would recommend using both. One and the other, see what works best for you. If you do want to get on this audit bank, then obviously you can do both. But the minimum that you need to do is the stride format. So you can go to the cure that we did. Don't use AI to fill it out because that's not the point, right? And the point of each of those methods is to have somebody think about them, right? That's the core part. The act of writing and thinking about it is what's creating the security, not just having the document. So don't have an LLM write it, right? Obviously, if you do, it'll be maybe hard to find out, but you're not gonna get the benefit of this relatively cheap way to get security. And then if it looks good, if the threat model, if the Stride threat model, if the 4A threat models look good, it's much easier to get your investors, to get clients hyped, to get auditors on board. Wonderful. The main differences between those, right? The 4A breaks down complicated system into smaller bytes, right? So as your protocol becomes bigger, it becomes really great, right? If there's a sudden vulnerability or attack, it should highlight what those are. Stride focuses on breaking down each action to making sure that that action is as secure as possible, right? So together you get a much more secure and complete system. Wonderful. What's the conclusion? Threat modeling is a tool. You can think of it like fuzzing. You can think of it like symbolic execution. You can think of it like static analysis. You can think of it as QA, right? It's just a tool to help you organize your project, to make it more secure, to find, if you're auditor, to find vulnerabilities in other projects really quickly. When we do an audit, we start with a threat model because we're trying to be as efficient and as effective as possible to find the most bugs. And we found, and we do about, what is it? Thea knows, right? I don't know, like 10 audits per week. Well, we have a huge team. We have like 30 researchers, right? So it's not that we do 1 week audits. It's just that we have in parallel a lot of different audits, right? And we have come down to this, right? We're trying to optimize and find issues. And this is what we found out to be the most useful for clients. If that's not useful for you guys, if it's too complicated, it's a tool like any other tool. Um, a bit about the Stellar Foundation and their audit bank. Stellar Foundation is wonderful, and we talked about the requirements for an audit bank. You can scan the QR right now at the top right in order to go to that page and see what you need there. You can choose audit firms that if you pass all the qualification, they will sponsor those audits, right, for your projects to help you get to the next level, right? I'm from Certora. Maybe I haven't mentioned. We're parts of a group of the groups um, in that audit bank that you can qualify for if that's something that you wish. Hopefully, this was interesting for you guys. I have the final page with Theo. Can you share the screen again? Perfect. Um, you can hit me up on Telegram or on the Certora page. We're gonna have a few minutes right now for Q&A for if anybody has any questions, or if you want another like real world example of how to do any of those systems, we can do that as well. Okay, thank you very much. Let's see if we have any questions, or maybe I did a really good job. Wonderful, wonderful question. How does the use of AI and LLMs in development products affect this threat modeling assessment? Well, I'm going to tell you really good news. This system, both of those, I'm going to focus on the 4As just because uh, I have like hands-on experience of using that with AI and LLMs, right? Writing this document, having your developers make sure that it's up to date, and then having the AI work with it is such a multiplying effect, right? We had an experiment where we just had like an LLM try to find bugs and then try to find bugs with the 4A's threat model. And the difference is between like a junior researcher and a medium researcher, right? It's ridiculous. LLMs love threat modeling. This is exactly the sort of data that is very hard for them to extract, and it triggers their internal programs to find issues, to make the code better, to help develop features, all that stuff. Generally speaking, I personally, Ray, I think that if an AI creates anything, you have to have a pair of eyes validate it, make sure it's correct, right? I'm very, when I do audits, I do manual audits, just because our researchers are just better than the LLM right now. Maybe in a couple years, I don't know, but right now we're smoking the LLMs. But especially for development, especially for something that continues, this is like a 10x multiplier for the usefulness of AI and LLMs. The reason I haven't mentioned it in the presentation is just because I wanted to focus on security, but they work really well with it. My recommendation is to write the threat modeling by yourself and then have an LLM like suggest addition to the threat model, which they can also do. And then you have this like master document that you maintain. Hopefully that answered your question. Do we have wonderful? Oh, great. Well, it's great to have you here because if not, we would have to, I don't know, either finish earlier or hear me talk more. Security is all about methodology. Can you comment on which part does Certora focus on versus, say, Halborn? I'd focus on our own methodology. I haven't worked in other firms, and we have worked really hard in optimizing our own methodology. So I just don't know enough to comment about what other firms do. But our methodology is we start from design and architecture, right? This is where we start with the threat modeling. We work with clients. We map it out with them. Some of our biggest clients, right? Aave, Lido, those EtherFi, Eigenlayer, right? When we work with them, we start even before they're starting to develop, right? Because they saw that if they have a design audit before they write the first line of code, it makes the code simpler and reduces audits and bugs in the future. So for them, it's much more efficient. So we start from the design from the high level, and then when we go around to do the audit, it's very much with the developers. We have the threat model, we go into the code base, and we go sort of like a spider, where we go through every entry point, we map it out, how it's supposed to behave, and then we come up, we just see so many different types of codes that we have like a stack of vulnerabilities in our head, right? And then we use those in order to find new issues, delve and see a lot of things that developers just haven't seen, right? Hopefully that answers your question. Would you say that the use of Rust in our ecosystem has made the tech stack more secure versus EVM Solidity? I would say in some regard it's more secure, in some regard it's not. So the problem is that Rust is not as readable as Solidity. So you will have, so it's a lot easier to make some types of mistakes. Overall, pretty similar in terms of bugs that we've seen, crits, highs, medium. I haven't seen one ecosystem that has less than the other, or Rust in general, if you want to go into like Solana and stuff. Um, but it's definitely different types of issues. Okay. Non-custodial exemption suggests the protocol must not offer a point of control. Any point of control, such as a vulnerability, can mean custodial. Do your audits include the legal analysis? I don't think I understood fully some parts of this questions. Maybe just my English isn't that great. But in terms of legal analysis, this is very much per protocol basis. There's a lot of regulations. Um, we are, at least the auditing part, are not lawyers, but we do work with regulators and we do work in order to find exactly what the gaps are and help advise on that. So this is very much per project specific and per regulation specific, but it's not a broad legal analysis in the sense that lawyers go into to check all the regulations and to map these out. This is something that we don't currently do because we do more security. This is a point though where we said assets, right? If you have something that you mapped out that you know that you care about, just writing that down as an asset allow us or any firm or internally to know that this is something that you care about, and you'll be surprised how quickly this sort of issues arise once you highlight what you care about. I think we are. I don't know if you have time for one more question. I see that there's the question about blend pool, but I don't think I have the time to fully delve into that. So maybe let's see if we have a different question, or if anybody needs any clarification. Now is the time. In the future, I won't be able to answer retrospectively the question. So now you have the opportunity to ask. Oh, is there an ISO standard that we achieve after audits for each? Yeah. Is there any ISO standard that we achieve after our audits for each DAP? Ooh, I don't think there is. I'll need to double check with our legal team. I know that a lot of the investors and regulator just has an auditor, like a qualified auditors to an audit, but I haven't actually checked if we provide the ISO or if that's something that the client just uses us as a check mark to get themselves. Uh, so I'm sorry if this is like a medium question. I just don't fully know. I'm not sure if Theo in the background knows this answer, but I'm sure that we can provide a better answer either in the YouTube in the future or on our site. I don't know. Sorry. Uh, okay, let's see if we have one final question before we say thank you for everybody. Let's do. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for whoever asked questions. I'm sure people who watch this in the future will be very thankful that you did. To everybody who haven't written any questions, better luck next time. I hope this was useful. And the key takeaway is this is a very useful tool. This is something that we recommend and we saw save so much. If you do use it, make it useful for you. Don't force yourself to write a 10-page document that you're never going to maintain. um, you can reach out to us to help advise. We have office hours. We can help advise there. You can start by doing it yourself, and you can also have other firms help you. I'm sure that they'll be happy to. Or just let us know. We want the ecosystem to succeed and be as successful as possible. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Cheers.